All right, so we've got quite a few definitions in this one. Our first one is for congruent circles. So in order for circles to be congruent, their radii or radius must be congruent. Right, so let's just kind of draw an example here. So again, for these two circles to be congruent, that means the distance from the center to here, these two pieces must be congruent in order for the circles to be congruent. All right, so polygons whose corresponding sides and corresponding angles are congruent is congruent polygons. So the sides that are in the same places have to be congruent, and the angles in the same places also have to be congruent. So those are just triangles whose corresponding sides and corresponding angles are congruent. All right, so for these triangles to be congruent, right, all the corresponding angles have to be congruent. So like angle A has to be congruent to angle D, right? Angle B needs to be congruent to angle E, and angle C has to be congruent to angle F, right? And then the corresponding sides, right? So like the corresponding sides in this case would be like AC and DF, right? Because they have those two congruent angles that they share, right? So those have to be congruent. AB has to be congruent to DE, and BC has to be congruent to EF. So to write, like when you see a congruent statement for triangles, it's going to look like this. So like we would say triangle ABC. So you need to list it in the same order. So like since A is congruent to D, D has to go first, right? Since B is congruent to E, E has to come second. And if C is congruent to F, those have to go last, right? So basically, that way you can just look at this and you can know, like if you have to sketch out a triangle, you can know which angles are congruent to one another. And then same, so like then side AB, right here together, is congruent to DE, right? BC is congruent to EF, and AC is congruent to DF, right? You can tell just from this statement what sides are congruent to each other and what angles are congruent, right? So this is the one case where the order matters. Doesn't matter how you start, but as long the corresponding angles have to match up when you write these congruent statements, okay? That's really it. That's all you need for this section. And then the rest of the week, we'll get into more specifics about how to prove triangle, or how to show, we're not doing any more proofs, how to show triangles are congruent with only having a couple pieces of it. So today we're going to work on page 159. And again, we're going to do 1 through 13 all.